Hello everyone, this is PTW Animations, and today we have a video that's a little bit different. So last night, for the first time ever, I bought an AEW pay-per-view and saw Double or Nothing. So now I'm going to be giving a review of the show. If you guys like these kind of videos, then you can comment for more of them. I enjoyed the show a lot. It was my first time buying an AEW pay-per-view, and it was great. So let's get into the review. So first up, we had the buy-in match for the NWA Women's Championship between Serena, Deeb, and Riho. First off, I just want to say the crowd, they had full capacity, and it was amazing. The crowd was super hot the entire show. They were really hot for this match too, even on the buy-in. They were going crazy. We had dueling chants for Riho and Serena Deeb. It was great. So these two actually put on a really good match for the buy-in. Deeb was targeting Riho's leg for the most of it. There were a couple cool spots with that. It was a good match too for the buy-in. There were some really nice near falls. Riho almost got Deeb with a roll-up, but this match was announced only a couple days before the show, so you kind of knew the result. Still a really great match, but Serena Deeb, eventually with a leg lock, she was working the leg of Riho the entire match, and then she wins it with a leg lock and retains the NWA Women's Championship. Really good match for the buy-in. Now let's get into the main show. The main show of Double or Nothing kicked off with Hangman Adam Page going up against Brian Cage. Taz was not at ringside, but Taz was on commentary. Taz is always fun when he's on commentary, but this match, a really hot start. The crowd was really into it. There were some cool spots. Hangman did a suicide dive, and then he tried for a crossbody that was caught by Brian Cage. Brian Cage using a lot of his power in this matchup. There was one spot where it was a superplex from Cage to the outside onto the stage, which looked really cool. And then they brought him back to the ring, and this was one spot that kind of annoyed me a little bit. It was really cool. So the spot itself didn't annoy me, but what happened after annoyed me. Brian Cage does a top rope F5. Like, are you kidding me? A top rope F5. And then Hangman kicks out. Like, that just annoyed me a tiny bit. Like, if you're going to do a top rope F5, it should not be for a middle of the match kick out. That should end any match. That's just my opinion. But still, a really, really fun match between these two. Eventually, Team Taz does come to ringside, even though Brian Cage didn't want them, where they try to use Ricky Starks tries to get Brian Cage to use the FTW Championship to hit Hangman Page, and Cage doesn't want to do it, turns around, and Hangman Page with the buckshot gets the win. So Hangman Page gets the win. The distraction finish a little bit, but it does further progress the story. This was a really fun opener, really fast-paced. There also one point where Brian Cage actually went for the buckshot lariat, which was really cool. I love it when guys steal each other's finishers. So a really fun opening match. Up next, we had the match for the AEW Tag Team Championships. The Young Bucks going up against Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. Moxley and Kingston come out through the crowd. The entire crowd singing Wild Thing. It was really great. Their entrance. The crowd super hot for this show. And this match gets started right away. The Young Bucks do their entrance. They do that thing where they pose and all the streamers come down. And while they're doing that, Moxley and Kingston just attack them. So this match gets off to a really hot start. This match was a lot of fun as these two teams went at it. There were a couple really cool spots where the Young Bucks have Jon Moxley. They do a Meltzer driver onto the stage. So Moxley on the outside, and the Young Bucks, they want to win by countout. It's actually probably one of the first times where I've seen AEW actually use countouts. But they actually did use it again later on in the show. But Moxley is going to get counted out. He slides back in the ring on the count of 9. Again, another little nitpick with the spot that I have with Moxley selling. I'm fine with the spot. It's just the way Moxley sold it. he took a Meltzer driver on the stage, and then he's up by like 3 or 4, and he is just walking around. He walks around like the entire ring. Like he's dazed walking around, and he's on like jelly legs walking around for like 7 seconds, which was kind of weird. I'd rather him just be down and sell it. Like, I don't get the jelly legs thing because the Meltzer driver's hitting your head, not your legs. So, I would rather him just stay down instead of just walking around for more than half of the count. And then he does get back in the ring, though. This was a really fun match, but the Young Bucks do get the win in this one. Jon Moxley, he is busted wide open from the Meltzer driver on the stage. There's one point where they're hitting the BT trigger, where they hold his arms and they knee him in the face, but Moxley just not going down. So they have to knee him like 4 or 5 times before he goes down. But the Young Bucks do get the win. They do retain the tag team championships. I kind of wanted Mox and Kingston to win, just because I really love their dynamic as a team. But the Young Bucks get the win. I'm really interested to see where this reign goes, because I thought Mox and Kingston would take the belts off them tonight, but they did not. So I'm really interested to see where it goes and who eventually does take the belts off the Young Bucks. Next, for the third match on the show, we had the Casino Battle Royale. Now, this one was interesting. The first entrant was Christian, and then the rest of the deck was, I believe, Powerhouse Hobbs. Then there was the Natural Dustin Rhodes. And then there was Max Caster, who was always really funny. I love his, when he raps down to the ring. There was one part he said a line about Edge when he was rapping about Christian, and then when he was trying to talk to Dustin, he tells him to look at him, because Dustin Rhodes is like looking down at the ground. He tells him like 3 or 4 times to look at him so he can do his rap. So anyone else in the first suit? Actually, yeah, there was Matt Sydal. I'm probably not going to remember all the entrants, but that is the first group of guys. Then later on, the next group of guys comes out. There's Matt Hardy, there's Private Party. I forget which one came out first. I think it was Isaiah Cassidy. There's a couple more entrants. Nick Camaroto, Penta El Ciro comes out. Then there's some more who come out. Casino Battle Royales are pretty confusing, so I'm just going to list some of the entrants. But some more of them. The other one of Private Party, Mark Quinn. There was Jungle Boy. He came out. He got a huge pop, which we'll get more into later on. And then eventually we get to the Joker. And the Joker is none other than Lio Rush. Lio Rush was the Joker. I was not expecting this. I was thinking it'd be like Nick Gage or somebody else. But it was Lio Rush who was the Joker. He gets in a good performance, but eventually he is eliminated, and we're down to Jungle Boy, Christian Cage, and then Matt Hardy and Private Party, the Hardy family office, that faction. And they're all trying to work together, but Private Party does get eliminated. And then Christian and Matt Hardy, they had a huge stare down earlier on in the match, but now Matt Hardy is trying to get Christian to team up with him on Jungle Boy, and then Christian just eliminates him. I thought that was a funny spot. But then it comes down to Christian and Jungle Boy. These two brawl on the apron. Jungle Boy does a thing where Christian throws him in the turnbuckle, and Jungle Boy sort of whips himself around to the other part of the apron. And then eventually Jungle Boy wins the Casino Battle Royale. This was surprising, but the crowd was super into it. I was super into it. Jungle Boy getting a huge pop, the entire arena singing his theme song. It was great, a really great moment for him. I'm really excited to see his match with the AEW champion. Obviously, normally with Casino Battle Royale winners, they don't do their match on the pay-per-view. They'll just do it on a Dynamite, which I think will be a really great showing for Jungle Boy. Up next, it is Cody Rhodes versus Anthony Ogogo. I was really not into the build going into this match. I really think the foreign heel trope is way overused. I know Cody talking about how, we went through his promo with a focus group or whatever. I still didn't like it. And besides, that focus group probably full of people who think Ronald Reagan is the best U.S. president. But that's a different discussion for a different day. This match was, it was fine. I mean, most of the story was how Cody's a wrestler and Ogogo just punching him a bunch of times. Ogogo does some cool moves though. But eventually Cody does get the win with the vertebraker. This match, it was fine. It was decent for what it was. It was one of the only matches on the night that I didn't really love. But it was fine. I kind of wanted Ogogo to squash him. He didn't. Cody gets the win. On to the next match. The next match is for the TNT Championship, Miro versus Lance Archer. This one was a lot of fun. Jake Roberts was not with Archer at the start of this match, but Lance Archer immediately dives at Miro as he's making his entrance. This match was crazy, just two big guys going back and forth. I think there was one spot where Miro threw Archer into the crowd. He was caught, but then he belly suplexed him back over the barricade. That was a lot of fun. And then eventually Jake Roberts comes out and he's got the snake in the bag. But then Miro, he takes the bag and he just chucks it. There probably wasn't an actual snake in there, but he took the snake in the bag and he just threw it. It was awesome. The crowd popped huge. Eventually, he's able to lock in the game over submission. Archer fights it at first, but then Miro just knees on his back, and then he bends it all the way back. Archer passes out, and Miro retains. And next, this matchup, probably one of my favorite matches in the entire show. The AEW Women's Championship, Hikaru Shida defends against Britt Baker. Shida's reign, it's been a really long reign, over a year, but she hasn't had much story. She's always pretty good in the ring, but never much real story up until this matchup with Britt. These two go back and forth. Shida is very aggressive in her style in this matchup. Lots of knee strikes, lots of cool moves. There's one spot where Rebel tries to hit with the crutch but accidentally hits Britt Baker. Then there's another spot where the ref is down, and then Britt Baker curb stomps Shida onto the title, and Shida kicked out. That near fall really got me. But then eventually Britt Baker is able to cinch in the lockjaw and Shida taps out, and we have a new AEW Women's Champion. Britt Baker, feels like we've been wanting her to win this belt for a really long time, and she finally does. Shida, she had a really good title reign. She always put on really good matches in spite of not really having the best story. But here, a really good match, and I'm excited to see what Britt Baker does with her reign. The next match, the in-ring return of Sting, teaming with Darby Allin against Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. This one got off to another hot start. There was one spot where Scorpio Sky standing on the chips on the stage for the double or nothing, and Sting comes up behind him and just knocks him off, and then he jumps off onto him. That was an awesome spot. But Sting actually was really good in this match. The crowd was going crazy for him. The crowd loved him. Darby got most of the work, though. He was the guy who gave the hot tag, basically. But he actually did a lot of really cool stuff. There was one spot where Ethan Page gorilla presses Darby Allin, and Darby's in the ring. He gorilla presses him to the outside into the crowd. It was a really awesome spot there. And then Sting didn't know whether or not to bring him back into the ring because Darby was already super taken out from that gorilla press, and then Ethan Page is being a badass. He's like, bring him back in and I'll beat him up more. So Sting doesn't want to do that. Eventually, though, Darby himself gets back in at the count of 9. And eventually, when Darby does get the hot tag to Sting, the crowd goes wild. Sting runs wild on everyone. Stinger splashes. And then eventually the finish comes. Scorpio Sky was looking for sort of a slingshot cutter from the apron into the ring. But then Sting catches it out. Scorpion death drop for the 1, 2, 3. Sting and Darby win. The crowd absolutely loves Sting. And a really fun match. Sting looked great. Now on to my favorite match of the night, the triple threat for the AEW Championship. Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy versus Pac. This match was it was amazing. It is the best match on the show. If you're going to watch one match from this show, I would watch this match. I loved it so much. So many amazing spots. Immediately, Orange Cassidy's taken out, so Pac and Kenny go at it, but there's some really great spots in this match. I'll just list them off. There's a spot where Kenny Omega has Orange Cassidy on the top rope. He wants to do like a tiger suplex off the top, and Orange reverses this by putting his hands in his pockets. The crowd popped huge for him. There's some other spots where Orange basically running wild with his hands in his pockets, the crowd going crazy for him. There's a spot where he does the kicks, the kicks he does. He does out to Pac, and he's doing those, and then Pac just low blows him. Pac is honestly so great. If they don't put the belt on Pac in within 2 years, they're messing up, because Pac, he is a bona fide superstar in my opinion. He looked so great in this matchup. He hit the Black Arrow, and I really thought it was over, but then the cover is broken up. But they all looked great in this matchup. Everyone did. There's a spot where Orange Cassidy does Orange Punch to everyone, and then he goes for the cover, and Don Callis pulled the referee out of the ring. And then eventually, though, Kenny Omega gets the momentum as Orange is just on the outside, where it's just Kenny and Pac, and then Kenny gets all 4 of his belts from Don Callis. One by one, Callis will toss him a belt, and then he'll just hit Pac in the head with it. He does that with all 4 of his belts, but then Orange Cassidy comes in, and Orange hits the Orange Punch on Kenny. He goes for the cover, but then Kenny Omega turns into a crucifix, and that is how Kenny Omega retains the title, pinning Orange Cassidy. A really, really great match. My favorite match on the show. If you're going to watch one match from this show, I would recommend it being this one. In the main event, it's the Pinnacle versus the Inner Circle Stadium Stampede, where if the Inner Circle loses, they would have to break up. This match, it wasn't bad, it just felt very off-putting for me, because the crowd just dictated so much of the energy on this show. They were so loud, so here, having a match away from the crowd for 80% of it just felt very odd for me. But regardless, the match was still pretty fun. It was mostly just made up of individual brawls between the members of the groups, like Wardlow and Hager were brawling, Jericho and MJF, and then Sammy Guevara and Spears, Santana and Ortiz against the FTR, basically just going back and forth, cutting between each of these different brawls. Throughout the stadium, there were some cameos. Urban Meyer had a cameo. He's the head coach of the Jaguars, which is the team that plays in the stadium they're at. That was interesting. And then there was a Conan cameo, and Conan actually got a huge pop from the crowd. They finally do get back to the arena. MJF tried to throw Jericho off a big sort of balcony type thing. He tried to throw him off. He didn't. But then it eventually comes down to Guevara and Sean Spears. They're brawling in the ring with the crowd. And eventually Sammy Guevara hits a 630. And that is what gets the win for the Inner Circle. A big babyface win. They don't have to break up. Overall, this match, it wasn't bad. It just felt very odd without the real impact of the crowd, especially since most of it was just brawling and punches. It wasn't bad by any means. It was just an odd choice for a main event, whereas the crowd was so hot for the rest of the show. But also, one thing I didn't like was how they never had a big stare down with all the members of the group in the ring. The only 2 pairs of brawls that we actually saw get back to the arena were Jericho and MJF, and then Guevara and Spears. I wish we got to see, the 5-on-5 stare down in the ring with the crowd. I think that would have been an awesome element in this match. But regardless, the Inner Circle win, I might have preferred the Pinnacle winning, but the Inner Circle win, they get a huge pop. So when judging the show as a whole, I thought it was a very fun show. If I were to give it a rating out of 10, I would probably give it an 8.5. I thought almost all the matches were just really, really great. The only exceptions were the main event, the Stadium Stampede, and Cody Rhodes versus Anthony Ogogo. But other than that, every single match on this show delivered. There were some really fun moments, and the crowd just played such a huge role in this show. My favorite matches were Karushita versus Britt Baker, and then the triple threat Omega versus Orange versus Pac. But a really good show for Double or Nothing. I'm glad this one was the first AEW show that I bought on pay-per-view. If you guys really like this review and want me to do more videos where I talk about wrestling and stuff like that, then just tell me about it in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all later.